again. Well, I'm in Mount Rainier National Park, just inside the Nisqually entrance, just off the side of the road. Just came into the park from the entrance and pulled over to the side of the road because I could see the Nisqually River down below me. Try to get down this pretty steep, snowy slope. I've got my hiking stick and I've got spikes on my boots. I highly recommend both if you're going to try climbing down a snowy or icy slope, especially with a 40 or 50 pound pack of plein air gear on your back. The ice cleats on my boots are doing a great job. Really give a lot of grip in almost any condition. Looks like other people have come this way, so not too worried. I'm hoping to get down there on the river and get a nice view of the river end of Mount Rainier. Alright, this part looks a little steep and a little bit muddy. I'm going to try to go down with the help of these trees on the slope, so I'm going to put the camera away. Alright, I made it down the slope and the view is beautiful down here. Looks like I'll have no problem finding something to paint down here. Bright sunny day today, really warm, spring-like day here in the mountains, mid-40s, not much wind at all, beautiful day. That is the westward facing, kind of southwestern facing slope of Mount Rainier right there. It's a view you don't often see of Rainier. And then off over here are just some foothills around the mountain. I'm going to walk around a little bit more, but I really like this view. I like the way the river is coming toward us. I like the shape of the mountain there, and the varied colors in the trees there in front of the mountain. And then of course the bank of snow on the far side there. Lots of interesting shapes and shadows. Lovely place to spend the afternoon. One with a Centurion oil primed linen panel. Really nice surface to paint on. It's an 11 by 14. I'm going a little larger. I do have to hike back to the car up that hill, so I'm not going any larger than what I can fit in the wet carrier in my backpack, but I am going a little larger because I think I'll have some time on this scene. Here's my colors I have laid out. Got ivory black, Rembrandt cold gray, titanium white, cerulean blue, cobalt blue, ultramarine blue, sap green, transparent oxide brown, burnt sienna, alizarin crimson, cad red, cad yellow, this is Windsor lemon, and yellow ochre. I'm not sure I'll need all these. I have them set out just in case I do. I've got quite a bit of white out. I don't want to stop and get more out, so I get more out of these colors than I think I'll need, and then I can put them back in my wet carrier when I'm done. A little bit of artist turpentine. I'll start out with this Richeson's rectified artist turpentine for the turpentine wash, and a little bit of liquid here. Once I'm done with the wash, I'll put the lid back on this and get the Gamsol out. I could do the wash in Gamsol, but I find the turpentine outdoors is fun to play with. It really does some things with the paint on the linen that are fun, and it just dries very fast. So you can paint on the surface within minutes when it's in the sun like this. Here's the scene I want to paint, and this is roughly the composition I'm going for. I'm going to put this main peak on this 1/3 vertical line, and I'll put the top of the riverbank, the line of the trees here, on the lower horizontal 1/3 line. So this whole area here will be heavy interest. These trees sticking out, the river coming at us. So, and the peak over here also, it's going to throw the eye over here to the left-hand side of the panel. So I'll need to do something over here, I think, as well, to add some tension. Maybe play up the colors in the water. There's some beautiful blues and yellows in the water here, and some strong contrast between the snow and the rocks and the shadows on the bank. There's some beautiful reds in this scrubby brush, the small trees sticking up. Lots of diagonals coming this way, so I'm going to want to try to find different lines. I don't want them all to be parallel. I really like how this distance, these distant trees in the foothills are really blue and faded out, so I'm going to concentrate on keeping those blue and then bring out the reds in these deciduous trees and the yellows, oranges in the pine trees against the blue distance. Beautiful scene, lots of things to choose from here. I have to edit quite a bit to get it to read. So I want the river really to be nice and dark, a beautiful dark blue-green with some yellows and oranges on the rocks. Some beautiful colors in the rocks in the foreground. I'm not sure how much of that I'm going to include. I may edit quite a bit of that out. Starting with a small bristle brush with a little bit of turpentine. And I'll just do a quick sketch, get the composition down on the panel, and then I'll go into the turpentine wash. Got my back to the sun, I've got the hood up so I don't get a sunburn, and also the sun on the panel. So hopefully there's not too much glare for you. With the sun on the panel, the paint's going to dry pretty quickly in the turpentine wash, and then as I use the liquid, it'll be getting tacky, it'll be set up by the time I leave in a couple hours. So for the turpentine wash, I think I'll start with a cobalt wash on the sky. I am painting with my sunglasses on. It's just so bright. The sun on the snow is really blinding bright. So I've got my sunglasses on. They're amber, and those tend to work okay when I'm painting. I've painted in bright sun with them before, and surprisingly it doesn't throw the whole scene color harmony off. I haven't tried to paint in blue sunglasses. I'm not sure how that would work. So for the turpentine wash, I'll go with a cobalt blue for the sky, alizarin crimson for the mountain, because the rocks that are peeking through have a nice grayish yellow alizarin crimson harmony. So I think leaving some of that panel peeking through will look nice. It'll also look nice peeking out of these foothills trees down below. And for this bank of pine trees, I'll go with cad yellow. And then for the bank of deciduous trees along the river going off into the distance, I'll go burnt sienna. And then for the river coming forward, I'll go cad yellow again. And then for the snow on the far bank and the banks, the rocks, I'll go alizarin crimson again. I'm choosing those colors because, for one, it'll help me to set the composition. I can see the shapes when I put them down in different colors. If I just do an overall burnt sienna sketch and a burnt sienna wash, that works as well, but it doesn't help me playing with big shapes. I find using multiple colors in the wash gives me an abstract pattern. It's almost like doing a value study and also playing with the composition at the same time. I can lighten the values, I can darken the values by removing or adding more paint, and I can move shapes around pretty easily. I also just like the abstract effects that the turpentine wash give me. I painted in watercolors. I still paint with watercolor and gouache for years, and one of the most beautiful things about those mediums is the transparency, and you can get some of that in the turpentine wash with oil. So it's kind of a nice way, kind of a fun way to do the underpainting. Now I'll take a little evergreen, a little sharper brush with a little bit of turpentine and wipe away the lightest lights. I try to correct the shape of the mountain a little bit more, and the snow on the foreground, maybe some of the rocks and the trunks of trees, the standing trees and the fallen trees. I'm often asked how long it takes me. I try to get done within a couple hours, about 2 hours. Sometimes I'll go 3, especially in the summer when the days are longer and the light is consistent for a little longer, especially if it's a nice spot. A shady spot also, if it's dappled sunlight or a partly cloudy day where I can kind of choose where the shadows hit, then I can spend longer. But sometimes I need to cut it back to maybe an hour. So it just depends. Here it's a really beautiful day. It's early February, the days are getting a little bit longer. So I'm going to take a couple hours on this. Mix up a little bit of sky color here. We've got cerulean blue, cobalt blue, and just a touch of ultramarine, a little bit of liquid, and quite a bit of white, titanium white. Mix up a fair amount and hold it against the sky. I can see the hue is about right, but the value is too high, so I'll add just a little more cobalt blue. This way to add darker value without shifting the hue too much. This is ivory black, so it does tilt a little bit blue, but not a strong blue. So when you add it to a yellow, it really dulls it and may turn it just a shade, a hair green. So that's closer. That's almost the right value, but it's still too warm. So I'm gonna add some cerulean blue and some of this Rembrandt cold gray. This Rembrandt cold gray is just ivory black and white, just a shortcut. Still a little warm. Add just a little more cerulean blue, a little more gray, and a little more white to keep the value up. I don't mind if I mix up too much color, because I can use it in other places in the painting to give some harmony, and I'll just take the leftover paint home and use it to finish the painting. So I don't mind mixing up big piles, it'll get used. Still too vibrant, so I'm going to add black and white and a touch of cobalt blue. I try not to add too many colors to the mix. I want it to be as pure as possible, but this far distant green is really grayed out. That's close. A little dark, so add back some white. That's good. So there's for the distant mountain, the distant trees on the foothills. If anything, with things in the distance, you want to exaggerate the lightness and the blueness. That'll add to the illusion. Now for the snow on the mountain, I'll take just a touch of cad yellow with a bunch of white, and that'll be the majority of the snow. A little bit of liquid. I try to mix my paint so that it has a room temperature butter consistency with liquid. I find that it usually stays nice and soft for 2 or 3 hours, even in sunlight. It'll also cling to my side palette. If I go any runnier than that, then it'll run down the little vertical palette. I can also use this highlight white for the snow in the foreground where it's tipped up and catching light. Okay, I'm gonna set this down here out of the way. Now I'll take just a touch of alizarin crimson. That's gonna be way too much. Alizarin crimson is really strong. And a bunch more white. There's where the snow is moving into shadow, where the plain is turning into shadow on the mountain, the light is a little bit warmer. So that cool alizarin crimson works good to turn the form. I want it to be just a touch darker value than this highlight snow, but that's too intense. So I'm going to scrape this and set it aside and add just a bunch more white. Yep, that's good. And I'll add a little bit of ultramarine blue to the mix. A little more of this, a little more white, and create another tone of the snow. A little darker than the highlight, and a nice, beautiful, warm lavender. That'll also help me to turn the form of the mountain. Now for the rock that's showing on the mountain, I'm going to grab a little bit more of this, alizarin crimson, a little more of this, a little bit of burnt sienna, and see what we get. Where the rock is getting struck by the sun up there, it's a nice warm color. That's a little too warm though. Add some more of this, add a touch of ultramarine blue, a little more white. I want just a little darker version of that. A little darker, a little cooler version of that. Where it's getting less, where the rock on the mountain is getting less light. Just a little bit of black, knock the value down without cooling it too much. That's pretty nice. That'll stand out against those snow colors. It's still very, very high value. Okay, now the line of pine trees. I'll start with the same colors I used to mix the sky. Ultramarine blue, cerulean blue, and just a touch of cobalt blue. And then some cad yellow. And some white. Let's see what that gets me. I could go straight to the sap green, but if I can mix my colors from a more limited palette, these colors that I used in the initial wash, it'll help me keep a color harmony throughout. That seems like it's a little too acid. So I am going to add, some more orange. And I'm going to add more ultramarine and just a touch of this sap green. Still too acid, so I'm going to add some burnt sienna. Quite a bit, because it has a strong graying power but not a lot of tinting power, and more cad yellow. Those sunstruck pines are really warm, surprisingly warm. That is close. I'm going to put a little of this aside. I'll use it in part of the trees. I'm going to add a little more sap green, a little bit of Windsor lemon, little bit of black, dull it and darken it, a little more green. A little more yellow. That's almost perfect. A little more green. More ultramarine blue. That's the majority of my tree color there. Now I'm going to mix up a darker version. Darker and more blue for some of the trees. They're a darker species of pine. So more blue, more black. Get a clean paper towel. More blue, more black. That's beautiful. It's still in the same value. Just a bit, just a touch darker, but still roughly the same value. Now I'll mix up a shadow color. More blue, more sap green, more black, and a touch of this one. That's a nice cool shadow. It's a little dark, so I'm going to grab a little more of this one. Actually, I'll grab this one and a touch of gray to bring the value up just a bit. That's okay for the bluer, more distant ones. Now I'll mix up a warmer version of that shadow. So here's same, but I'll add a little bit of this alizarin crimson, green, blue, black. As the shadows are coming closer to me, they're getting warmer, so I'll need especially right around the center of interest, very dark, warm shadows. Alright, now I'll mix up the deciduous tree colors. Start with a bit of yellow ochre, a bit of Windsor lemon, a little bit of alizarin crimson, a little bit of burnt sienna, and some white, a little bit of liquid. Too vibrant, so I'm going to add some black. This seems a little light as well, and a little bit of ultramarine blue, that surprisingly is about right for some of the shadowy areas of those deciduous trees. It seems really dark, but it's actually the same value family as this. the sun on the pines, so we'll go there. And then I'm going to grab some of this color, this excess color I had, and mix it in. And create the sun on the deciduous trees. These leafless deciduous trees have a beautiful lavender harmony, warm lavender harmony. A little more yellow. A little more white, a little lighter. Maybe just a touch of red and a little more white. Very close. I'm going to add back just a little bit of alizarin crimson and burnt sienna. A little more red. A little more burnt sienna and alizarin crimson. And a little bit of this yellow to keep the value and the intensity up. This is where most of my time is spent when I'm painting outside, is mixing up these colors. I spent a lot of time on the turpentine wash today as well. Alright, there's a foreground pine here that's a little higher value and a little more yellow than what I have so far, so I want to mix that up next. It's close to the center of interest, so I want it to be a little more intense, so I'll go with sap green and Windsor lemon and a touch of cad yellow. Let's see what that gives us. Very, very vibrant. So I need to kill it. I need to dull it down. I can add in just a little bit of the color I mixed already. It'll dull it down, it'll darken it, it'll give us some harmony. Beautiful color. That's closer. I need to add maybe just a touch of Rembrandt gray and white to dull it but not lose the hue I have. Just a touch of burnt sienna. Maybe I'll add just a bit of this. I'm not going to be able to match it exactly for when the light is changing on me as I'm doing this, so I don't need to be super rigorous, but I want to come as close as I can within a few minutes. Now I'll mix up a shadow color for that closer pine. It's more vibrant, so I'll just add more sap green. A lot darker, so ultramarine blue and black. I don't want it to be as cool as the shadow color I mixed earlier for the pines. It's a little richer, darker green, not quite so blue, and not quite as dark. Yep, that's good. And now for the river. The majority of the river is a pretty dark green, where you see into the depths of the river, with some yellow and orange and red rocks. A few white rocks where the rocks are sticking up out of the water and are dry and catching the sun. Now the rocks are all over the place as far as color goes. I'm not going to try to mix all those colors. If I squint down, they're pretty close to this mountain rock that I mixed with just a little more intense reds and blues. So I'll take some photos with my iPhone of those rocks and probably mix those colors back in the studio to finish things up. Or I just may leave the wash. The wash, I think, is pretty darn close. So back to the river, I need to mix a dark green, very grayed out dark green for the water. You know, it's pretty close to this dark shadow color I mixed. So I may just add a touch of this into that and call that the dark green river water. And then I need to mix a really deep electric cobalt blue, where the deep of the sky above is reflecting on the water, where the plane of the water is turned up. It's reflecting that gorgeous electric sky blue. So a little bit of my darker sky blue color and add more cobalt and just put a few touches of that in. And then the white water on the river is a really high value, not near as high value as the snow colors, maybe more like this value. And it's kind of a greenish white off in the distance, and as it gets closer it turns a little more alizarin crimson. Dip into just a little bit of Gamsol first to make sure the paint slides nicely off the brush. I usually spend a lot of time mixing and matching colors. So if you find that the light is changing fast, if you're losing the light, if the weather's changing, then just minimize the amount you're trying to paint. Go with a smaller panel, or just focus on the light effect that you want. Don't worry about trying to get a finished painting. Hard to do, easy to say and hard to do, because when I'm out here painting, I want a beautiful finished painting. I can't help it, but sometimes you just don't have the time or the consistent light to do that. So you can either make a smaller painting and focus on just the effects you're after, or you can come out multiple times. If you're going to have a string of days with the similar lighting and weather, then you can come back multiple times at the same time of day and work on the same painting over and over again. I haven't done that much. I want to do that more. As I paint, I'm going to try to step back once in a while and take a look at the scene, make sure it's giving me the impact I want at about 6 or 10 foot back. That'll help me to also see errors in the composition and errors in my color matching. I find if I step back, those really jump out to me. Dipping into just a little bit of alizarin crimson and a little bit of white here and there to just add a bit of variety, a bit of interest to the sky. I don't want it to be just flat. When I look out at the sky, I actually do see shifts in color, vibrant blues to subtle reds, reddish blues in the sky. And it gets lighter and warmer as it gets closer to the horizon. Maybe even touch the ultramarine blue here for a hint of real dark blue closer to the top of the sky. Or the cobalt blue. If I touch it here and then touch it into my pile of paint, I can see what the value is going to be, so I'm not surprised when I put it on my panel. And I really don't mind if the sky is darker, as dark as it's going to be right next to the mountain. That'll make that mountain jump out. Now I'll paint slightly over the edge of the mountain here, where I intend to paint, so that I can paint back into that with the mountain snow, and that'll give me a nice soft edge. And the mountain is kind of got a flatness here, and a sharp point there, so I want to save those. And it's got a little notch in it there. Just feather over the edge a little bit. And it's fine if you leave some of the underpainting showing. That won't hurt a thing. It can add some interest sometimes. I find if I leave my mountains as angular as I can get away with, the more interesting they are. The more, from a distance especially, they seem more lifelike, more alive. If everything is round, it can be kind of boring. And then I'm sure you've heard this before, if you make most of your strokes, especially toward the top of the painting, if you make those vertical, that can reduce glare. So I try not to overdo it, but I do use that. And everything in my painting at the end of a plein air session, I try to keep the edges real soft and try to keep out any ridges. I don't want a lot of ridges that I have to paint over later if I do some touch-up. I'll take a different brush and paint the snow on the mountain. Go with a pretty large evergreen flat again. And I'll start with the lightest light. I'll make sure my brush is clean first. I use this to wipe out the whites and the turpentine wash. So I want to make sure it doesn't have any paint left over for a mat in it. I want the snow to be real pure white. At least pure like I mixed them here. dip into some straight white if I need to, just to add a few accent points. If I pick up some sky color, I can just wipe that out on a paper towel. I find when I start to add these subtle, slightly darker, slightly more warm and cool tones into that initial brilliant yellow-white, that's when the mountain really starts to take shape. It's important though to keep looking at the mountain and observing where those forms are. You can't just put the pattern in there haphazardly, then it won't read. You got to notice where the warm and cool snow pattern is, and it changes through the day as the sun moves. Of course, that pattern is moving. So there's some little peaks off in there, but I don't want them to be exactly the same shape or exactly the same size. So I'm going to exaggerate this further one a little bit and keep this one a little bit smaller. And then of course this, I forget what the name of this little butte or crest of the mountain is. It's got a specific name. I want to make sure I get the shape of that, including the rock pattern, right. I want it to be recognizable. It's amazing how just the slightest, most subtle shift in temperature within the same value can add so much form and so much realism. I'll go back in with a smaller brush and paint the rock and the trees on the distant mountain. Actually, I'll use the same brush to paint the distant trees and then a little smaller brush for the rock. Try not to make any repeating shapes, any similar shapes, or make any strong patterns that would look unnatural. I'm also painting over the edge of where I'm going to paint the closer pine trees. I'll paint right into that. Well, I'm losing the light. The light's going behind that mountain behind me, going behind the trees behind me and throwing me into shadow, so I'm gonna have to wrap it up before it gets dark. Here's as far as I got. I got the snow and the rocks mostly captured on the mountain. So now I'll just scrape off these colors that I mixed onto my glass palette and either finish in the studio or come back and finish another day. I might come right back up here tomorrow. It's not that far a drive and it should be another sunny day tomorrow. As always, thanks so much for joining me. If you like these videos, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Join me in the next video when I return to this location to finish the painting. If you'd like to support the channel, please visit my website. I sell these little plein air pieces at a reasonable price because I consider them practice. It really makes me happy when someone likes my art enough that they want to hang it in their home. You can also sign up for my newsletter and stay up to date on my new work and shows and get a discount on original art and prints.